Hello, everyone. We have two second-year students here, Tali Anderman and Omid Scheybani, here with us today. Hello, Tali and Omid. So excited to have both of you here.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. So can we start by you both briefly introducing yourselves and talk a little bit about your backgrounds? So what were you each doing before business school, and what are your goals after graduation? And then we can open up to some questions from the audience.
Sure.
Tali?
Okay. So before the GSB, I was working in the nonprofit space at the Environmental Defense Fund. I focused on sustainable agriculture, mostly in India, and then later on domestic environmental issues. I came to the GSB to work on corporate sustainability, and I'm hoping to go into that post-graduation.
Awesome. Omid?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Germany. I graduated from undergrad from a business degree in Germany and Argentina, and started working for Google in Ireland. Was there for 2 years. Then I transferred to the US, was another 4 years in the US working on the Latin American market, doing cloud computing partnerships, distribution partnerships across Latin America, which was a great time, but it felt like I was ready for for the next kind of phase of growth, and that's when I decided to apply to business school and came here, and very much with the goal of pursuing entrepreneurial endeavors, and that's currently what I'm doing as we approaching the last 7-8 months of our time as second-year MBAs.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, let's look at a couple of questions. So first, our first question is actually coming from a college senior from India. This person writes, I am applying for the Stanford MBA Deferred Enrollment. What are the variety of qualities that are looked into an applicant applying directly from college for the Deferred Enrollment Program? So I can take this one. So we do encourage college seniors to apply to our program. That is the earliest time that you are able to apply to the MBA program. And we are looking for the exact same things. We are looking for the intellectual vitality, the demonstrated leadership potential, as well as your personal qualities and contributions. We take all of that into consideration and consider the fact that you are a college senior. So we are still looking for the leadership, but maybe instead of a full-time job, maybe we are able to see that in your extracurricular activities that you've been able to do on campus, or any work in your community, or if you've been able to do research or any internships that you've had. So we are still looking for those same qualities in all of our deferred people who are applying for deferred enrollment as well. Our next question for our students is, what did each of you do to fulfill your global requirement? You want to start, Omid?
Yeah, happy to. So before school even began, we had a new program. It was a pilot. When I started, it was called a Global Seminar, and that was kind of 2 weeks before school began, and with I think about 25 other incoming MBA 1 students, we went to South Korea. It was a trip led by 2 MBA 2s, so students that were a year ahead of us, and that in itself was sufficient to satisfy the global requirement. But I really personally believe that the trips you do with your fellow MBA classmates are not only some of the most memorable experiences from our time here, but also incredible learning opportunities. I feel like given the depth of these trips and the intensity at which you're getting to know a country and its economy and its business landscape, I really wanted to do more. So not only did I go on another trip to China, I also ended up currently organizing a study trip to Italy coming up in March.
Great.
So that was my experience.
Awesome.
Yeah, similarly, I was on a global seminar before the school year started, so that was for me to Brazil, and it was an incredible opportunity to connect really deeply with my classmates before even coming to school, and we had this wonderful kind of safety net and community as we were adjusting to life at the GSB. It was led by 2 second-year students, and they were a wonderful resource as all the questions start pouring in when you get here. It was also a wonderful opportunity to learn about Brazil. I'd never been, and so our subject was poverty alleviation and environmental sustainability, which was very relevant to me, and so we met with people across the nonprofits, in politics, and then in corporations, and so got to learn a lot. I likewise couldn't get enough, although that did fulfill the requirement, and so I went on a global study trip to Mexico over Christmas. And something that the global study trips really highlight is the value of the network within the GSB. So our second-year trip leaders were able to organize meetings with the president of Mexico, with the foreign minister, with the head of the central bank, and then a variety of really interesting nonprofits and entrepreneurs. Still couldn't get enough. Excuse me. So I actually led the global seminar this summer to Argentina and Peru, and was able to create that experience for incoming MBA ones.
And this experience of doing more than one global experience is quite common for our students, so great. Okay, the next question we have is, what is life like for students bringing their partners or families with them? If you have personal experience or even from your classmates' experience.
No, I have nothing to add.
So the truth is, we both came here as not married, as singles. We do, however, have a lot of classmates that either came with their SOs, which stands for significant others, or without their SO but with their children. We have those cases as well. I would generally like to highlight that the GSB community, given its relatively small size in comparison to other schools, is a very inclusive community where you very often find other students reaching out and trying to help, be it, I heard just yesterday, I was sitting over dinner, the Germans were coming together last night to celebrate our cultural heritage. But and one of my classmates was talking, she has 3 children, and she was talking about how her husband had never actually sat in one of the GSB classes, and I asked why, and she said, well, because of babysitting. And I said, I'd love to be your babysitter so that your husband can attend the class. I think it's just a very inclusive community, and truth be spoken, I think the experience is slightly different. You just have a different priority if you have a husband or wife at home, or children. But I think still there are many ways you can get a lot of learnings out of this experience, and it's just a slightly different one, admittedly.
I'll add a couple of small pieces. I think a lot of the families who do come here, they live in graduate student housing, and they do nanny shares, and there's a kind of common play space. So in terms of raising kids, there is a lot of support, and they tend to pool resources in a truly business school way to kind of get through the day and create more space and more community. The other thing is SOs are very integrated into the culture. I spend more time with some of my classmates' SOs than I do with them. There's a lot of events after school hours, even during school hours, where SOs are welcome, both academic and more for fun. And so they really are as much of a part of the experience as they want to be.
Awesome, great. Another question about admissions here. So how much weight is given to one's academics and work experience while applying for an MBA from Stanford, and how much weight for extracurricular initiatives? So for us, we are not weighting anything or place any stronger emphasis on one part of your application more than the other. We do read your application completely holistically. We look at you and treat you as a whole person. So there's not one thing in your application that will be weighed more than the other. We are really trying to figure out all of the things that you will be able to bring and contribute to the class. Okay, so the next question, back to our students, is can the students talk a little bit more about classes that they took outside of the GSB and maybe specifically at the D school, the design school?
Sure.
Please.
I'll start.
Yeah.
So I am a joint degree student in the Earth and Environmental Sciences program. So I've taken a number of classes there, one of which was a design school class on the food system. I mean, each class is going to be different. I loved both of the classes. I took a food economics class and a class at the D school. And the main thing I will say is it's a great chance to connect with people outside the business school. We call it the bubble. It is hard to get outside the bubble, and classes is a great way to do that. The professors are obviously excellent, and so it's really a matter of prioritizing what is important for you to learn. A lot of classmates take computer science classes, language classes. Maybe Omid will speak more to that. But the level is phenomenal, and especially in your second year, you have almost complete freedom to take whichever classes you want.
Yeah, just to echo what you said, I'm currently taking language classes. I took language classes this year, which was Portuguese. Now I'm doing Chinese. That's something I like. The question is also specifically about D-School classes. I personally have not taken a D-School class yet. I do have it, however, as a really big priority for my next 2 quarters at the GSB. I felt the offering at the GSB was satisfying a lot of my kind of needs in terms of what I wanted to experience. But I think for the next 2 quarters, I really wanted to venture out. And on that note, the D-School has very often, information sessions where they present all the different classes that are available. And if it's not a class, it's a pop-up class, which you do over the weekend, dedicated to a specific topic. So there are different ways to kind of engage with the D-School program.
Awesome. Yes. Luckily, our curriculum is quite flexible. That allows our students to take a lot of classes outside of our bubble. So the next question we have is, how did you decide to choose Stanford? Want to start, Omid?
Yeah. How did I? Okay, that's maybe just to preface a little bit my answer. It's Stanford was the only school I applied to, and I actually applied 2 years in a row. I didn't get in the first time I applied, but I was so adamant and so eager to get into Stanford that I did it again, and it worked out the second time. The reason why I ended up applying to Stanford was when during my 6 years at Google, a lot of the managers I had 7 different managers or directors, and I think 3 or 4 of them were actually GSB alums. And I always knew about Stanford. I had a lot of admiration for Stanford, but because of those managers and because of the leadership that I experienced through them, this admiration for Stanford became an aspiration to become part of Stanford. And these leaders, these managers were people that not only influenced me professionally in my thinking about my career and how I show up at work, but also very much personally. And that was kind of seeing the way how they were impacting me and shaping me, and hearing all these anecdotes that they brought to work from their time at business school. That really got me pumped and fired up to apply to business school, so much that I ended up applying twice. So involuntarily, but yeah. Still.
It worked out.
It worked
yes.
out. Yeah.
So I'll talk very briefly about why business school, which is a big part of why Stanford. I was working, as I mentioned, in a nonprofit in India on agriculture, and was just very frustrated with the current mechanisms for making change in those ways. Policy, as we've seen, is an intense and often varying process, and so I wanted something that was much more streamlined and more effective, and business school, going through the corporate sector to influence sustainability, seemed like the way to do that. With that in mind, I applied actually only to environmental joint degree programs, and so Stanford actually had a program I'd looked at for a PhD many years before, and now I'm doing a joint degree with the IPER program. So that was an easy fit, but honestly, one of the most clear memories I have of when I was like, Stanford is it, was an info session. I came to campus, I'd been working in SF, I came to campus for an info session, which is part of why I love doing these, and it was really interesting to talk with the admissions facilitator, but then after, actually one of the students who was leading the session came up to me and was like, you know, I see you're from Israel, I'm from Israel, do you want to grab coffee, can I answer your questions? And she ended up connecting me to people in the IPER program, and was just a real resource and sense of support through the process. And she didn't know me at all, and that for me really reflected the sense of care and commitment that people have here, and honestly it's only gone up from there.
Great. And a quick follow-up question, since you mentioned doing a joint degree, how do students typically balance doing that, and do you have any kind of advice for how to do so?
Yeah, so as I said, I'm doing the Environment and Resources joint degree. There's people doing law degrees, medicine, computer science, engineering, a whole range, and each of those experiences are going to be different. In general, the program is actually really well set up to accommodate. There's almost no pressure or no additional work that I have to do. It takes longer. In my case, it takes from 1 extra quarter to an extra year, and it depends on how you balance your units. But it really comes down to choices, and so you make choices around how you want to use your course time, and do you want to take more business classes, or do you want to go across the street? And those choices will depend how much longer I end up spending here. But then a lot of other programs, they just integrate it perfectly, and while you're here, and then the rest of the time you're there. So it's been very smooth, at least for me.
Awesome, great. Another quick admissions question. So would you recommend getting a recommendation from a professor? What if you're applying as a college senior? So typically we tell people to shy away a bit from getting recommendations from professors. Typically they do not provide us with the level of leadership potential that we're looking for, the level of detail that we're looking for. The biggest kind of exception to that is if you are working with a professor doing research or anything like that. So if you are working with a professor outside of class, maybe as a TA or a teaching assistant or as a research assistant, then that may work for you. The biggest piece of advice I typically give for choosing recommenders is to look at the questions that we actually ask them, that we will ask your recommender. And if that person, whether it's a professor or someone else, for a fact can answer those questions with a lot of detail, then that is okay for you to use that person. So definitely use your judgment when you're picking recommenders. Next question is about extracurriculars. What types of extracurriculars are you involved in here on campus?
I can take that. It's a good question. I do a lot actually. So I'm on the board of 4 different associations. One is the Diversity Committee, which is dedicated to raising more awareness and making the GSB a more diverse and inclusive environment. Then there's the Asian Business Student Association, on the board of that. We actually have our identity retreat coming up this weekend in Santa Cruz. There's 50 of us going there to discuss what it means to be Asian. For context, we decided that Middle East, so originally I'm from Iran, is also geographically part of Asia, just to explain why I ended up there.
Yeah.
Then there's the student alumni board, where we kind of develop relationships with alumni, and I think the last one is Women in Management, which is an organization very, very dear to me. We have a very large kind of movement here on campus, which is not only by women to support and empower each other, but also we have an ally group, which is Women. It's Women in Management, the man ally group of it, where men come together and discuss how we can be more supportive of women. And these 4 kind of activities, plus there are 2 trips I'm organizing. I mentioned the Italy one. I'm also taking 10 classmates to my home country, to Iran, over Thanksgiving, and on a very personal trip outside of school, and things like that. So there's a lot going on. Like there's really no limit to what you can do extracurricular.
Yeah, right. Want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll add. So I was also involved with WIM last year, and I'm the head of the Food and Ag Club. But I think the most important extracurricular for me right now is the Arbuckle Fellows program. It's a leadership program that you do in your second year, and part of the program is to teach actually a squad of first-year students. Every first-year student takes leadership laboratories, and that lab is a group of 6, which is your squad, and it's led by a second year. You also do a series of coaching with one-on-one with the students, and that's been just phenomenal opportunity to develop skills as a coach, but also to get to interact with first-year students and practice my leadership. I'll also just say on the side, I'm a yoga instructor, and so I was teaching last year yoga classes every week for classmates in our residency of Schwab. So there's just really unlimited ways to give back and to get involved.
And I still have to make it to a class.
They're over now.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Missed opportunity.
Great. So for you specifically, Omid, can you talk a little bit about what life is like here as an international student?
Yeah. So I actually lived in the U.S. 4 years prior to starting at the GSB, and what it's like as an international student. So I certainly didn't have the experience of actually having to move for the GSB to the GSB, because I've also been living in the Bay Area previously. I really appreciate kind of the number of international students we have. Personally, I wish we had even more. I think I very much connect very well with international students. We very much also celebrate the fact that we come from different countries. Is it this weekend? Yeah, on Sunday we have a big food fair. There are 15 different countries preparing food from their nationalities, where we kind of celebrate the diversity, the geographic diversity we have at the GSB. I think I think that's a phenomenon that I've seen at schools as well as at the workplace or in my social circles outside of school. It's just people just tend to bond possibly quicker and in a easier fashion with people of their own kind, and I think these are tendencies, as I said, you find everywhere. But the good thing, really, what I would like to highlight is that there's not too much of group formation. So people do come together to celebrate a certain element of their identity, but at the same time, this element is also celebrated by other groups. So we have a lot of cultural events that are highly or frequently visited by also American students, or so, for example, the Asian Student Business Association is very close with the African Business Student Association. So there's a lot of support between the different identity groups.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything to add at all? Just with your interactions at all?
Yes, I would say it doesn't really cross my mind in a day-to-day way, not because I'm not aware of all of our diversity, but because I think there's a really fluid relationships between people of all places, American and across all other kinds of identities.
Awesome. Great. Okay, a question about faculty members. How accessible are faculty members, and do you have an example of a meaningful interaction you've had with a faculty member since you've been here? Let's start.
Yeah, a lot, honestly. So very accessible. I have to just say very honestly. This week I had a 50-minute talk, which is talk and walk. That's how I call it.
With
yeah.
With Baba.
With Baba?
Oh, yeah.
No,
yeah.
It was a different professor, actually, not Baba Schiff. But so we just walked and talked for 50 minutes, and he's one of my professors. I just dropped him a line and said I want to pick his brain on some of the entrepreneurial projects that I'm currently pursuing. Just today I signed up to host a faculty dinner where one professor would come to our house and we would host a dinner for him and 7 other students. I would say they're very accessible. They are always willing to meet. They are always willing to advise. I have seen in the past, there have also been cases of professors helping you with funding. So it's very, very, very close. Not only do they know you by name very quickly because of the class size, but they also really care. And I made it a priority for myself this year to meet as many professors as possible. And they're absolutely willing. And it's great. I love that aspect.
Great.
Do you want me to add?
Yes,
A couple
absolutely.
additional thing. I completely agree with that. I think they also go in a very wide variety of ways to invest in the community. Over the past couple months, a very established politics professor we have here, Keith Hennessy, has been doing lunchtime BBLs to discuss the progress of the election.
What is BBL?
Brown bag lunch. We use acronyms all the time here. And so that's just his way to kind of give back and answer people's questions and get involved. Similarly, there's a really popular class here called Managing Growing Enterprises, taught by Joel Peterson. And there's some students who don't get into the class because it's a lottery system. And so he, this quarter, ended up hosting a series of seminars at his house. And so people who didn't get into his official class were able to go to his house and kind of hear a lot of the learnings that he shared with us. And that just, I think, across the board, people are really committed and invested.
Absolutely. Great. So how have, if at all, have your career aspirations changed at all from your time here? How do you think about that? Want to start, Tali?
We're smiling because we were just talking about that.
Yeah.
So I've actually had a pretty big shift. I came in thinking I wanted to do sustainability, specifically around farm sourcing and sourcing products in a more environmental and socially friendly way. I did that this summer. I was at Blue Apron and their farm sourcing team, and I realized in a lot of ways that the thing that was interesting to me about that space was the people I'd been working with. I'd been working in India with a lot of smallholder farmers, and it was those connections that had really motivated me, and less so the food part. So I came back and kind of potentially have scrapped that entire hypothesis, and I'm looking at much more people-focused roles in kind of leadership and management.
Yeah. I came with a vague idea around entrepreneurship, and I was very intentionally vague about it because I think these 2 years there's a lot of different opportunities crashing into your life. Quite literally, a single conversation can change the direction of your thinking, be it with a classmate, a class, or a professor. And I've been actually very, very open to that. I still want to pursue entrepreneurship. I nevertheless decided this summer to work in venture capital because I spent my career in technology, but I wanted to move from the operational side to the financial side of the table, realized that I don't like it, which now makes me want to look back into the operational side of things. And what I'm currently working on is, one idea is within a class called the Startup Garage, which is a very experimental class based on design thinking very much, and 2 other ideas. So it's still entrepreneurship. And I think the beauty in general is that you're exposed to a lot of different kind of career paths and other people's career aspirations. I think you always need to be a little true to yourself, and when you enter the program, just have a rough idea where your North Star is, because with all these different people who are equally ambitious and determined, it can very easily happen that you get little influenced by that, or being inspired is great, but maybe being influenced by other people's decisions is certainly not the best. So you want to have your North Star, but be open to kind of the inspiration coming from your classmates. And I think that's how I've been faring so far throughout the 2 years.
And just really quickly, what are the resources that you've been able to that have hopefully been helpful to you in thinking about how you pivot?
Yeah, so we have a career management center, and there are career advisors, and I meet with one pretty regularly, and I was teasing her with a group of students, like, oh yeah, I see Grace every week. And she stopped them and she was like, no, Tali actually comes to see me every week. So that's a very helpful resource. And then they have a lot of visioning workshops, and obviously a lot of different people you can talk to help explore and negotiate and walk through that process.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, you already touched on this a bit, Tali, about electives and getting the classes you want. So what is that process like in choosing electives, and do you typically get the classes that you want?
Shall I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Me? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you always get the classes you want? Most of the time, yes, but not always. And I think an important lesson that I learned throughout my time here is really knowing what you want, and then once you really know what you want, you prioritize that. There's a election system, basically. You make those classes your priority, and you get them accordingly. I would say how I'm choosing electives. The beautiful thing at the GSB is we have a huge range of different types of electives, classes that are focused on environmental topics, classes that are very data-driven, classes that are very interpersonal, kind of touch on interpersonal topics. I just made the decision that I want to focus on my strengths, not compensate my weaknesses here at the GSB. So I'm not taking many financial modeling classes. I'm focusing more on philosophical, interpersonal type classes. And, just there's a big variety. My favorite elective so far has been Winning Writing with Glenn Craman, who he's a former New York Times, the former editor-in-chief, if not mistaken. And he had this 2-week class about just how to become a better writer, be it giving feedback to your employees, be it an op-ed that you write, or other types of content, cold emails. So we rehearse that, and there's a big variety, and you can choose them by just reading the reviews. There's descriptions online, but there's also student reviews about the classes. What I did, I asked a lot of my MBA 2 friends, what did they take, what do they recommend, and they all responded and gave me their lists, and I took that as a starting point.
Yeah. I'll just add my personal favorite elective has been interpersonal dynamics, which is commonly known as touchy-feely, but I am taking Winning Writing next quarter, so who knows?
You'll love it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. So a couple quick other questions about admissions and financial aid. So talking a little bit about financial aid and how that works. So our financial aid application happens after you have already been admitted into the program. So once that happens, our process is need-based, fully need-based. What that means is after you are admitted, you will get information about the financial aid process from our financial aid office. And you will submit documents talking to us and helping us to understand a little bit more about your assets and your income. And the level of fellowships that you will receive will be based on that information. So whether you are a domestic student or you are an international student, you are eligible for fellowships. We will also talk to you about loan options as well. The other question tangentially from financial aid is talking a little bit about the Stanford USA MBA fellowship. This is a brand new fellowship that we have launched this year. And with this fellowship, it is specifically targeting students that have very strong demonstrated ties to the 12 states in the United States that make up the Midwest region. So we have a ton of information about this on the website. We also have a recording of a previous webinar we did about the fellowship. So if you have any further questions, you can ask about that. The specific question here is, what are we looking for in a candidate? So with this process, you will apply to the fellowship within the MBA application. So we're looking for, at a baseline, the exact same thing we're looking for in the general MBA application. So the intellectual vitality, demonstrated leadership potential, and the personal qualities and contributions. In addition to that, we are looking for you to help us understand what your ties are to the region, and also the impact that you want to have upon your return to one of those 12 states. If you are interested in the fellowship, you must apply by the round 2 deadline this year. And again, for more information, definitely check out our website. Another question back to our students is, what has been your favorite experience at Stanford so far? We'll start with that. You want to start, Tali?
Sure. Goodness. I guess the highlight is, in essence, what I'm taking from that question for me was giving a talk. Talk is a tradition we have at the GSB. Every Wednesday night, 2 students come up and give a talk on their life. The origin actually was, I just found out it was basically someone saying, oh, there's so many incredible people here and we don't really know that much about them because everyone is so humble. And Andy Dunn, who was at GSB 2008, was like, well, then why don't you talk about it? And so it really is just a chance to talk about who you are. And I was fortunate to give, I think, the 3rd talk of the year, which was basically talking to a bunch of people I didn't know yet. And from that was incredible, the number of emails and kind words and people reaching out to really get to know me. And so it made me feel very safe in the community and also very respected and valued.
Yeah, favorite experience. I gave a talk as well, and I agree with you, Tali, that it is an extremely rewarding experience to share your story with your classmates. For me, my highlight, however, was the GSB show, which is a musical that is entirely written and directed and produced by GSB students. And it's a comedy, you can say, kind of making fun of ourselves here at the GSB, and that for me was a highlight because not only because of all the effort that went into it, but also because of this really cool opportunity to be on stage with your classmates and entertain 1,200 professors, fellow classmates, significant others, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
And it was very entertaining.
Yes. Yeah. What was your role? Did you sing, act, dance?
Yeah, so here the funny thing is I was actually only acting, but they gave us microphones, so I had a microphone on my ears or in my face all the time, and I was dancing. And while we were dancing, some people in the front were singing, so everybody thought I was also singing. So everybody was kind of congratulating me on how great of a singer I am, but they didn't know that the microphone was actually off while I was dancing. But that was a personal thing. So.
Awesome. Great. Okay. So question about what is the best way to prepare to get the most out of Stanford for those who are able to be admitted to the program? Tali, you want to start?
Sure. I asked myself this a lot. Still asking myself this. Time is quickly ticking away on this incredible experience. I think feedback I got that was super helpful was to spend time with your loved ones. I cannot underestimate how intense of an experience this is and how little time you will have to spend with friends and family outside of this world. Not because you don't want to, but because your day is just incredibly full. So really, if you can, take the summer or the year before to spend time with people you love. And the other thing is to prioritize. Things will change, as we've discussed, but if you can have a clear sense of what you're here to get, it'll be that much easier to make the decisions that flow in almost on an hourly basis. There are so many opportunities with every hour of your day here, and without a clear sense of what your priorities are, it's really easy to get swept away into things that are really cool and really valuable, but maybe not what you're here to get.
Yeah, I really want to echo that, and I kind of mentioned that earlier as the North Star. I feel you should, if you come to school, you should have a general idea. You should have a really good idea of who you are, what your values are, and kind of stay true to them throughout the experience. As I said, I think there's a lot of there's social pressures, there's social influence, there's a lot of things you're exposed to that kind of shape your thinking, and they can really drag you into all different directions, I feel. And but if you know what you came here for and what you want to get out of it, and if, as Tali said, if you know your priorities in advance, that really helps make good decisions and be happy with the decisions you make. Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, we are coming up on 45 minutes, but before we go, just a couple last things, almost tied to the previous question. Any final words of advice for people who are still trying to figure out whether an MBA is right for them? You want to start, Omid?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky question. There is no right answer. I don't think there's no right applicant or right student for an MBA. I think an MBA is such a diverse program and such a diverse opportunity that people from all different walks of life can get something out of it. Someone once told me, you get an MBA if you want to lead, if you want to be the executive of a large organization. And I had that in the back of my mind when I came to the GSB, but I think at the GSB I realized that it's not true. For me personally, an MBA is an opportunity to challenge my thinking, to make amazing new friends, to take classes that push me, and really also just have some intellectual kind of freedom to pursue things that I, at my time at Google, would have never considered. So just one quick example, I was working on developing an investment thesis for Iran, and I wanted to pursue that over the summer, and I worked with it with a professor, but that's something I would have never even considered while I was at Google. But at the GSB, you're exposed to so many great things that it makes it possible. Point being, I think an MBA gives you a lot of opportunities. It really comes down to you if you want to take advantage of those or not.
I think that's great. The only thing I will add is, in terms of whether or not it's right or when it's right, really just try to figure out who you are. And I say that because that's a huge part of the application process. It's also a huge part of what we do here. I would say more than half my time is spent on reflection and feedback to better understand what my strengths are and what my values are, and then to improve upon those. That comes into play very strongly in the application as well. So as much time as you have given to making that decision, I would say personally I allocated a lot of that time towards just figuring out who I was and what I wanted. And from that, I think naturally decision hopefully will flow. And in terms of timing, I started my application in October for round 2. I thought, I should just wait a year and forget it. And then I said, who cares? Like, I'm just going to give it a try, and it worked out. So not saying that's the right path, but certainly don't limit yourself just because you don't think it's the right time from external pressures.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Tali and Omid, for joining us, and for all of you around the world for watching. You can learn more about the MBA program on our website and by watching our videos on YouTube.